Welcome to this video. Thank you for being here. Steph from stephsafandos.com. And this video is on love and hate. From love to hate. Why does this occur? Why do we hate? Why do we begin to love self, another in relationship, and then hate? Why does that occur? Why do we move from a place of being connected, being real with each other, being loving, being in a space of endearment, and then move to a place of hate or disconnection or disdain or disapproval or disappointment or pain or fear around who that person is? Why do we do that? Why do we become so beautifully obsessed? Can you be beautifully obsessed? But why do we become so beautifully engaged fully in self or another to then only be led down a path of hate? I use the word hate. It is a strong word. And we often, not often, there are times in our lives when we do feel that, when we do experience that, when we completely connect from self in that space. So this video, from love to hate, and why do we do it? This video is about self, but it's also about relationships. When I'm speaking here, I'm speaking openly to relationships, and I'm speaking openly to the way and the manner in which we treat ourselves. There are times in our lives when we absolutely love ourselves, we care, and I don't mean in an egotistical way, or in an egoic way, or in a vain way, or in a way that is hyper proud and in extreme vanity. I mean that we genuinely have love and care for our being. We value ourselves, we have self-worth, we believe in who and what we are. We believe in our wonder, we believe in the fullness of self, we believe in our ability to be just tremendously magnificent human beings. And then we lose that. We develop a disdain for self. We develop a hate or a discouragement for self. We disconnect from what we once valued. We no longer are able to see the value in that. Why is that? What does that mean? Well, this video will aim to respond to that query. This video will aim to provide us with some of the whys behind that, and also then provide us with some tools to assist us in moving through those actually what are natural cycles in life. It's an ebb and flow of life, because we live in a realm of, and here I suppose is the first lesson within this video, within this lesson, this macro lesson. Here's the first micro lesson, is that we live in a world of duality, a world of polarity, a world of opposites. Our reality is a reality of duality. And by embracing this model of reality, this truth, this belief system, this very real view of the world, this very real functioning nature of the world, we soften towards really deeply connecting to what it means to understand the human condition. And we become accustomed to just knowing that, you know what? It's okay if I move through a cycle of disconnecting from self. It's okay if I move through a cycle of not being present to self, or maybe even stepping back from self and not liking what we are being and who we are being, because that provides us with an opportunity to self-examine, to ask ourselves some deep questions, pertinent questions, and ask, is this who I'm really wanting to be right now? Is this me? Is this my authentic nature? Am I expressing the fullness of self? Am I getting the most out of life? Am I present to life? Am I fully engaged? Am I here? Am I loving? Am I Am I really acting in accordance with what is most important to me, with my purpose? Am I thriving in life? Like, are we asking these questions? And we generally only ask questions when we're running at a perceived deficit, when we're not entirely ecstatic with how we are behaving or how we are moving through life or the opportunities we are receiving or presenting to life or presented with in life. Blah. So we need to have elements of disconnection, and I wouldn't go as far as saying hate, but we do reach those points sometimes. And sometimes the human condition collectively, I'm fairly firm in this belief system where we are as a collective human species, our collective unconscious and conscious being, where we are in our evolution of growth of self, of the collective, we require pain to change, transmute, transform, move in a different direction. Not every time and not for all of us, but as a large collective, generally speaking, we almost have to hit rock bottom to realize that is not who we wish to be. That is not how we wish to act and behave. And it's evident. It's evident in how we behave as a collective, and then how we react or respond to that very aberrant or negative or extreme behavior directly after. But then we fall back into these aberrant negative ways again. So pain is not bad. Hate sometimes occurs for our partners, for our loved ones, for others, for ourselves. And it hurts. But what can we learn from it? How can we grow? How can we expand ourselves in that space? How can we be a more enlightened, better, more connected, more evolved, more expansive version of self through every experience we have? And why do we move through love and hate cycles? Well, the answer to that, or the response to that, the answer is not quite the right word, but the response to that initially is because we live in a world of duality and polarity, and embracing that is a starting point. One of the other reasons, and there are many, and we're going to go through them today, well, some of the other reasons are because we really disconnect from self. Like when we begin to act in inauthentic ways, we begin to lose touch with what is real for us, what is real in our lives. So I'm going to oscillate between speaking to the self and speaking to relationships and what that actually means for us as people. So you know what I might do, and this is really cool. Let's take a bit of a turn here. I had a little bit of a different plan, but let's take a little bit of a turn here because this video is about, of course, about relationships. This macro lesson is about relationships, and of course. Most of you know that are familiar with my teachings. I'm an incredibly big believer, intent believer in relationship to self being a priority and a primary function of our lives, right? You know that. All of you know that are familiar with my work. But I'm a huge believer of showing up in relationships to others in a particular way that enhances our growth and enhances the growth of others. And I call that conscious conscious relationships. And that's really powerful. Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. It's in fact a very beautiful place to be. When we're able to come from that place where we're so aware of self and so astute of self and so connected to self that we are able to really see, wow, if I behave in this way, I can grow and I can help my partner grow, and that's beautiful. So I want to focus on the relationships today, the externalized relationships, and just know that, and I'll bring it back, I'll do it consciously, but just know when I'm not doing it, keep bringing it back to self. Because everything begins with self, because what we have here and in the whole corporeal being is really a foundation. And it can be a tremendous catalyst for our expansion and for our growth and evolution and deeper understanding and connection to what it means to be alive, what it means to hold consciousness, what it means to exist, what it means to experience existential wonder, awe, and rapture. So, why? Why love to hate? Not because we love to hate, but why do we move from a place of love to a place of hate? Some of us do love to hate, and generally that can come from predisposed conditioning as a young adult, a young person, a young child, models of reality that are quite abstract and absurd and self-preserving and have only been exposed to violent or aberrant behavior, and that violent and aberrant behavior sets up belief systems that it is normal to hate. It is the norm, and it is accepted, and it is necessary to hate or to dislike or to be in a state of disconnection, because that is what is familiar, and familiarity is safety, and the ego thrives on that. And I speak to that in other videos, such as videos on toxic relationships, videos on self-sabotage as well. So lessons on self-sabotage. So we'll go into that in greater detail, and you can observe those videos there as well if you like. So when we are inauthentic, when we are not living our truth, when we are disconnected from self, we disconnect in our relationships, and we develop resentment. We develop anger. Now, what generally happens towards ourselves and towards others, but mainly towards others, because the ego does not like assuming responsibility for itself. The ego does not like assuming responsibility for a path that is been taken that is causing angst and pain and anxiety, even though sometimes pain and anxiety and stress is familiar and better the devil you know than the devil you don't. So we project. We do something called project, and that's very much part of the shadow work. So in my Chaos to Clarity online program, there's a whole lesson on shadow work. And it's quite an extensive, deep lesson on shadow work. So again, we begin to explore these darker aspects of self, these unconscious aspects of self, and we begin to move into them with greater clarity and depth. But let's remain with authenticity and congruency for a moment. And the projection. We project and we blame and we shame others. And we cultivate and we develop this hate, and we blame others for us not living authentically, because there's a disconnection. There's a dissonance within us. Parts of us want to live authentically. Parts of us are too scared to live authentically for various reasons, which I discuss extensively in the self-sabotage video. And those parts that are in dissonance and just butting, need to release that tension. It either becomes released internally, which generally does eventually, turns into some disease or sickness or cancer, some malignant formation of ourselves at a cellular level, and or we project. And the love that we shared with someone, it turns to hate. It turns to disappointment. It turns to disconnection. It turns to pain. It turns to suffering. It turns to not respecting the other. It turns to blaming the other for the choices that we make, which is a very immature state of being. It is an extremely immature disposition to maintain, and an immature position to hold in life. And of course, when we begin to do that, how do we expect our partner and our loved ones to respond? They will often respond with either sadness or aggression back, depending on their conditioning and their predisposed behaviors and their coping strategies for life, as yours. They may respond with distancing themselves and creating space, which may further anger you. And we continue to lose ourselves. We forget that the reason why our loved ones fell in love with us or became attracted to us was because we were potentially in our element. We were potentially in our authentic self. Why change that? Why change that for anybody but yourself? Why change who you are for anybody but you? You see, when we act in accordance with who we are, when we act in accordance with our truth, with what we value most, with our authentic nature, we filter the types of people that we bring into our lives. And this is a beautiful thing. This is so important for us. We filter the quality of the person that is in alignment. Quality is defined by the alignment that is maintained with our values and theirs, the common shared interests, but also how we choose to relate to each other. Because people will revere and respect who we are when we speak our truth. Some won't, and that's okay. You don't need nor want those people in your lives, and that's okay as well. We cannot, I have a saying, this is whether you're religious or not. I'm personally not religious, but I have a saying, not even Jesus could make everyone happy. For all that he was portrayed to be and how he's depicted in the New Testament and his ethos and philosophy of agapistic ethics, he was still crucified by a subgroup or sect of people, majority of people or cultural group at that time. He was crucified because he was a threat. He was not liked. He was feared. Although he was a beautiful human being, he was still not revered by all. Portrayed to be a beautiful human being. Of course, there's contention of whether he actually really lived or not, and that's this is not the platform to discuss or not discuss that. We can move into conversations of religiosity another time. Right now, let's continue to speak to the transition from loving to being disconnected. So when we act in accordance with our congruent nature, we are being deeply, deeply authentic and deeply true to our being, deeply open to our souls and to our hearts. Now, what a magnificent place to dwell in. And again, we filter the people that come into our lives. Now, other reasons why we may move from love to hate, and this is interesting. So I've done a video on this, and I've mentioned this in other videos, on the 3 stages of love, and you can find that on my YouTube channel. And it's called the 3 stages of love, and it's on my YouTube channel, Steph Stefanos, under the playlist live video feeds, actually. Live video feeds. And it's a deeply interesting video with respect to how we move through phases of love. And what generally happens is in the first phase, and I won't go too much into it, you can of course look at this video, you can check this video out on YouTube. But we go through this first phase of love, which is highly chemical, and we call it the chemical phase, and highly hormonal. And a cocktail of hormones are being released, neurochemicals are being released, and bonding us and bringing us together. And why do we come together? Well, this is a really interesting question. There's a number which leads into the second phase of love, by the way. So that's why I'm mentioning it. So why we come together, there's a number of reasons why we come together. And depending on what ethos or philosophy you follow, various teachings will say we're here to teach each other, we're here to grow, we're here to learn, we're here to challenge each other, we're here to love each other, that and all of the above and more. But one of the core primary reasons why we actually come together in life is to be of service to each other in the following way. Is our adult relationships are predicated on what we did and did not receive both consciously and unconsciously from our primary caregivers. And we try to replicate that in our adult relationships to fill a gap or fill a void or almost finish the process of wisdom and connection and love. And we can often spend, depending on your predisposed beliefs on this, lifetimes, or we can spend a lifetime fulfilling this prophecy, so to speak. So when we reach that second stage of love after the honeymoon period is the first stage of love, and that generally lasts anywhere from 3 months to 7 years on average. And if we were just to give that a very simple number, on average 2.5 to 3 years, okay? And once that phase begins to dissipate, we move into the next phase of love and the next phase of relating, conscious relating or unconscious relating for some of us, and connection, and the way we choose to relate and connect to each other. Now, in this phase, we become deeply challenged by the other's predisposed belief systems, by their coping strategies, by their behaviors, by their attitudes, by their posturing. We will be deeply triggered, and as we will deeply trigger them. And there's a cohesion that takes place. But in the midst of this highly emotional state that we can both find ourselves in, we lose ourselves in that. And we lose track, we forget here, we forget with here, how important it is to be calm, to be present, to be patient with ourselves and our partners, to be loving with our partners and ourselves, to be connected with who we are and to be connected with our partners. We lose that. We lose the ability to be that because we get so caught up in the emotionality of what we are experiencing, the heightened emotions, the extreme emotions that we're experiencing. But it's so important here. So what will happen is we'll move from a place of we had so much fun, we were having so much sex, we were making love, we were connected, we were spending time together. Now all you want to do is be with your friends. Now all you want to do is have space. Now all you want to do is be annoying. Now all you want to do is tell me about all your problems. Now all you want to do is this. You never were like that. Why have you changed? Why? And what happens is we become more comfortable with each other. It's actually a beautiful thing. We become more comfortable with each other. We begin to share unconsciously, mainly, our pain points, and our fears. And sometimes for most of us, it's too overwhelming because we're not ready for it, or we're not mature enough to handle it, or we have an idealistic view of what love is, which is love should be easy. There should be no problems in love. And there's a fine line between having problems and having a toxic relationship as well, and the perpetual nature of that. And I go into greater detail of that in the video Toxic Relationships as well, which you can of course observe, and you can view that. So we begin to, when we immerse in this second stage where we're really deeply challenged, like we are deeply challenged in this phase of love. And we, for the most of us, revert to old conditioned behavior, habitual patterning, traditional coping strategies that just go against nurturing and coming together in a symbiotic whole. And what we do is we fragment ourselves, we fragment each other, and we fragment the relationship. And we move apart, and it doesn't work. And we wonder why. Because we weren't patient enough and wise enough and observant enough to just be with what is occurring and nurture each other and ourselves during that process. Now, we may find that the relationship needs to come to an end, because the definition of a conscious relationship is where we are both growing. We are growing for ourselves and we are growing for each other. It's not about the relationship, it's about growth of the individuals. And if that isn't occurring, if that's perpetually not occurring, then we need to be strong enough and courageous enough and loving enough to release the other and release ourselves from that relationship, and either spend some time on our own or move into another relationship that is conducive to our health and our love for self. Love is an interesting series of events, series of moments. Love is beautiful. Love is connected. Love is a grand practice. And moving from love to hate, we forget so easy how much we loved and how important love is to us. And we forget in the midst of that chaos, of that fear that we experience, because we revert back to fearful habits. We revert back to being in pain, that childlike pain, that disillusionment that we had with our primary caregivers, that disillusion that we had with self, that not knowing how to cope, so we attack or we defend, we withdraw, we go full steam ahead, and we lose ourselves in that. And in that process, we force the other to respond in a way that is not healthy, and they'll either attack or they'll defend or they'll retreat, and they'll form hate or disdain or disconnection. And so that process compounds, and again, we lose ourselves in that. And it's a choice we make to lose ourselves. And I'm telling you that we don't need to make that choice. We really don't. Why do we move from love to hate? Fear. It's another reason. We are scared of actually losing our love, that love. This is the interesting mind of the ego mind. We're so scared of losing love that we self-sabotage our love, and we project and we blame and we shame again and we justify. And that eases the pain. And that eases and justifies, well, could have never loved them anyway. No point in going too deep, because they've been this type of person to me. And really they haven't. It's because of our own behaviors. Sometimes we're too scared to go deep in love, to go to depth of love, because it's too overwhelming, it's too overpowering. We've never been loved before in that way, in a way that is beautiful, that is connected, that is loving, that is nurturing, that is open, that is vulnerable, that is connected, that is without expectation. Sometimes those beautiful people come into our lives where they just love us fully, but we're too scared to receive that. We have fears around freedom, we have fears around commitment, we have fears around becoming too close, we have fears around losing, fears around gaining. Now, we don't know how do I act? How do I behave in a relationship that is so loving? This is just weird. This is strange. This is not right. I need to do something to fuck this up. So we find things, nuances, character traits, expressive traits, attitudinal traits to pick on. That compounds, that disrupts. And if the other person is not quite as expanded or evolved or able to deal with that, they revert to their old coping strategies. And so the cycle, the negative cycle of back and forth continues. And we move from a place of complete love and depth for each other to a place of despair and disdain, disconnection, hate even. Working with one particular couple at the moment where they are really deeply triggering themselves. And it's so interesting because they're triggering their opposing wounds. And they know it, but they keep triggering, but they keep staying and they keep coming back to love because they do ask, what would love do now? And they're fighting and they're arguing and they're bickering and they're conflicting, but they keep coming back to love. And they both had an amazing breakthrough a few days ago. And it's just the most amazing because they've persevered. You'll be familiar with my 3P model in the Chaos to Clarity online program where I speak extensively to the 3P model, practice, patience, persistence. They have practiced loving each other. They have been patient through the difficult times and they have persevered and persisted tremendously through the pain points and the difficulty and the challenge. And they continue to show up. They just continue to show up for each other, even though there's actual hate there and animosity, but there's love. And they're going through their triggering and they both realize that they're astute and wise enough to realize that they're mature enough and connected enough and they've done enough work in their lives around self to realize that. And it's beautiful. It is fucking beautiful and amazing. But it takes courage. It requires deep courage to step into the unknown. And that is one of the key components that are necessary for us to remain in love instead of remaining in hate, or to constantly flux through love and through hate and have these oscillations of extremes. And instead of having these oscillations of extremes, we can do this and experience that. And in my harmonious balance model, I go into great depth and detail over 12 principles, 20,000 words in that particular description, that descriptive model, a really deep model, 50 pages, an ebook basically, on what that looks like, on what it looks like to be in harmonious balance with self. So why though again, there's more whys, there's some more whys here. Why do we go from love to hate? Sometimes it's because we are brought up with that. We are surrounded by that. In our media, we look at divorce rates, we look at our environment, our cultural context, our societal norms. And it's the norm to be together and break up, be together and break up. And somewhere in our unconscious minds that affects us, that influences and infiltrates us and impacts us. And we live in a society that is so fast-paced. And we live in a society where the collective attitude for the large part is the grass is always greener. So in order to explore what that green grass is, we will cultivate a particular behavior in a particular environment and circumstances where we can justify leaving our relationships, where we can justify being disconnected from self, where we can justify hating ourselves or hating the other, or not being connected to the other, or not wanting to learn more about the other. The grass is greener. That mentality is a debilitating mentality. It also removes us from being appreciative and being present and grounded in the now. And when we are not grounded in the now, we are not able to be grateful. And gratitude is a deep, deep process and state and posturing that allows us to be and immerse in health and wellness. How beautiful is it to be in gratitude for all that we have, for all that we experience, for all that we are? How amazing is it to be connected to self, to not have a mentality of the grass is greener, but to find complete and deep satisfaction in where we are in the present moment. And that's not to say that we won't make decisions that will move particular situations or experiences on, because they don't serve us anymore, but they come from an authentic, congruent state, not from an attitude of fear of missing out, which is a prevalent norm in our society, hashtag FOMO, hashtag FOMO. And we're familiar with that. And that affects our individual decision making. And I urge you to look into that. Importantly, to look at the childhood wounding. That is a big cause of why we transition from love to hate. In the initial stages, we're excited. We are present. We're having sex. We're making love. We're physically connecting. So everything's new. The energy is new. The physicality is new. The connection is exploration. That's beautiful. We need that uncertainty, that excitement, that flamboyancy, that spontaneity in life. It's part of our human needs, basic human needs. We forget also we need certainty in life. What would life look like if we were to come from love, authentic love, congruent love, inspired love all the time? We move from love to hate sometimes because we are not inspired. We are not following our purpose. We are not following our dreams. We are too scared and too fearful to live in our power. So we disempower ourselves by disempowering others, by projecting, by blaming others for not achieving or living in and on our purpose. When we live in and on purpose, we are more connected to self, and being connected to self allows us to explore the chasms of our being with greater efficacy, allows us to explore others, allows us to have more patience, more awareness, deeper consciousness about others, about our circumstances, about ourselves, about who they are and how they move through life. And that's a beautiful place to be as well. Interesting. So easily we revert to painful, attacking, derogatory, aberrant behavior when we feel threatened, instead of just asking ourselves, what is the teaching here? What is the lesson here? What is the beauty and the wonder in all this? Who can we be here? Can we come from love? What would love do now? We become so fearful that we forget that. We don't feel that. We lose contact with that. So what are some of the things that we can do? What are some of the postures that we can assume in order to remain in love? Well, a preventative as opposed to a curative approach to life is always going to be useful. In other words, say you're feeling good about life, you're feeling in a healthy, connected place. Explore your being, explore your fears, explore your courage, explore your life, explore your childhood, explore your pain points, explore what you like, what you don't like, explore your values, explore your purpose, explore it all. Be with you. Begin with you. Be a constant and consistent explorer of your inner chasm, of the wonder of who you are, irrespective of whether you're going through a tough time or a great time, emotionally disparate time or an excitable time in life. That doesn't matter. Just explore. That's a starting point. Prioritize love. Prioritize the pursuit and the embodiment of love. Prioritize wanting to listen and be conscious to your partner and to yourself. For men out there, I have a model, the Conscious Warrior model, which is a 12-principle model on how to be a real man, how to connect with, how to relate to the beautiful feminine in our lives, the feminine within ourselves, our children, Mother Earth, how to relate deeply with other men. Leverage that model in terms of how to relate and come from a place of love and concern and empathy and compassion and truth and authenticity and congruency and inspiration. Follow your dreams. Live on purpose. Discover what you value most and live it, be it, embody it. You'll come from love far greater, and then seek those people that also share not only your goals, but share the ability to connect to themselves and that live on purpose and that are whole beings. Move out of fragmentation. In other words, move out of your shadow self, make the unconscious conscious, make it malleable so you're able to transmute and transform it. Become consciously aware of your being. Become consciously aware of your deficits, what your pains are, what your fears are. Begin to be with those fears and those pains fully. Do that deep work on yourself. Come into an integrated place of wholeness, and then you will attract wholeness in your life. So when you move through those ebbs and cycles of despair and disdain and disconnection, you can sit with it, you can be patient with it, you can ride the wave, you can accept, you can tolerate, so to speak. You can adapt, you can overcome, you can be robust in your movement. Cultivating a mindset of resilience is so powerful. Now, resilience is a whole other a macro lesson and video in and of itself. But there are basic principles to resilience, and resilience is our ability to overcome obstacles, to overcome difficulties, to recover from difficulties and challenges. And toughness, whether it be mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, is our ability to move through those challenges. So cultivate toughness and resilience. How do we do that? Simply put, expose yourself. Exposure training so titration is so important. Exposing yourself in small doses to difficult situations, and then developing coping strategies that are healthy for you and healthy for others in that space will assist you in being a grander version of self, and will assist you in coping with developing healthy coping strategies that are open, not closed, not secret, not unconscious, not manipulative, not in the dark aspects of the masculine and the dark, unhealthy aspects of the masculine and the feminine, but rather in the healthy aspects of the masculine and the feminine, light and dark, that are confronting, but not in a negative way, but in an approachable way, in a beautiful, open way. That's what we want. That's where we want to be, amazing, beautiful people. That's what we want to feel and experience. Life can be a roller coaster, but it needn't be. And it needn't be flat either. That's boring. That's sedentary. That's mundane. We don't need that. We need a balance though. But to oscillate between love and hate or between extreme emotions, that's not healthy. So by knowing self more, by being deeper in self-awareness, by immersing ourselves in self-awareness, we are able to be these amazing versions of self. We are able to be these beautifully connected versions of self. And in that space, we grow and we connect to others. And we allow others to connect to us. And instead of coming from fear and disconnection and pain, we can come from an appreciation, a respect, a reverence, and a trust for each other. Learning to trust and revere and respect people is another how. And learning to do that with and for yourself. That assists us in remaining in love and always coming from a place of love. Again, that doesn't mean that you will not break up or separate or let go of or release an old paradigm or a belief system, model of reality, or behavior that does not serve you. You very well may. You may also release a partner, but it's coming from a place of openness and love and awareness as opposed to fear and restriction and constriction and pain. There's a vast difference, because if we keep coming from that place, we will continuously come from that place, and we will continuously experience deficit and extreme difficulty and perpetual challenge in life that is unhealthy pain and fear, because we're not learning the lessons and the teachings we need to grasp from those situations or from that teaching, from that modality. It will just appear again in a different way, in a different shape, in a different form. I want to say thank you very much for being here. I want to urge you to explore yourself, every chasm of self, every chasm of your being, every aspect of self, as often as you can, and enjoy it. Cultivate an attitude of enjoyment. Thoroughly enjoy the challenge, thrive on it, because when we thrive on challenges, we are thriving on life. We are choosing to grow and expand. Thank you so much for being here. It is my honor to be able to serve you in this way. I do sincerely hope that the material here is of resonance, that the information exchange is of resonance, that you are able to gain something from this. Now, I'm deeply humbled by your being here and listening, and I wish you many blessings on your journey, and of course I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much.